Very good evening to all of you. You're watching the Urban Debate with me, Afrida Rahman Ali. Though famous for its pristine forests and lush greenery, the Western Ghats has always been a controversial piece of land, and it passes through the states of Tamil Nadu, Kerala, Karnataka, Maharashtra, Goa and Gujarat. The issue of demarcating economic sensitive zones or areas has been a long debated subject now. Just yesterday, on the 18th of July, for the fifth time, the Ministry of Environment, Forests and Climate Change has issued a notification inviting objections for the identification and declaration of eco-sensitive zones in the Western Ghats. The Union Ministry of Environment and Forests and Climate Change issued a draft notification announcing 46,832 square kilometers of economically sensitive areas in 5 states, the ones marked there on the map as you can see, along the Western Ghats, as per recommendations of the Swaminathan Committee on this area. Karnataka has the highest area covered in this with 20,668 square kilometers. So all states concerned have been given 3 months' time to file objections. The Karnataka government has come out opposing this move and has raised concerns over the economic impact of such a decision. Karnataka claims that tribals and villagers living in the areas which are declared sensitive shall be displaced. However, it was later clarified by the officials that that would not be the case. Goa and Karnataka have opposed the draft. Kerala has started protests. Maharashtra and Tamil Nadu are yet to respond. So there's a divided argument on this issue between environmentalists, state and centre. While some believe demarcating zones may impact activities like mining, building, construction and township and also area development projects, the centre believes that the move is necessary to conserve biodiversity. So tonight I want to ask the experts on the panel whether this plan by the centre is pragmatic or problematic. Let me welcome our panelists this evening, Mr. Mohan Krishna from the BJP. He's the spokesperson of the BJP. Aishwarya Mahadev, spokesperson of the Congress Party. Sandeep Ghosh, author and political commentator. Joseph Groover, former member of the State Board for Wildlife. And Kavita Ashok, president of the Tree for Life NGO. Thank you so much to all of you for joining us here. Very good evening. I would like to begin by asking the environmentalist on the panel, because this is so critical for our viewers to understand the fact that we are talking about the Western Ghats. There is a certain eco-sensitivity involved. The reason why this issue has been dragging for so long, there have been commissions after commissions set up. There is even a Western Ghat special panel, an agency that was set up to actually research on the biodiversity of this particular stretch. States have had enough time to deliberate over this issue, but every time a draft notification is issued, there is stiff opposition. I therefore want to, ask Mr. Joseph Hoover to first put things in perspective for us. Then we can start a conversation around why this kind of resistance. Mr. Hoover, why are the Western Ghats so significant?
See, first of all, I would like to start the debate by saying our politicians are those MLAs and MLCs who have been countering this eco-sensitive zone notification have not understood what it is all about. Either they're not capable of understanding or they don't want to understand. They're just creating trouble, instigating people locally, saying that their livelihoods will be at stake, their lands will be taken away and all that stuff. But if you read through the eco-sensitive zone very carefully, it's clearly defined into 3 zones. That is green, orange and the red. In the green, it says those who continue to have agriculture activities will continue. Those who have their dwellings will continue. The only worry is the red and the orange, where it's strictly defined that there should not be any permanent structures, like there should not be any quarrying, there should not be any hydroelectric work, there should not be linear projects. And this whole thing drives around why this protest is happening among the politicians in Karnataka is basically because they own a lot of land. They've invested a lot of money in a lot of land in and around the sensitive zones. So
Okay.
they need to understand. They need to understand that this is in the goodness for the future of our generations to come. That they center us release this notification. We need to respect that. We are all in the midst of the climate crisis. We are having climate events hitting every other day, floods, either it's drought, floods, or landslides, and excessive heat, excessive cold. We are all being part of this now. So the politicians who are just being elected to be there for 5 years to look after the benefit, to the goodness of the people, they are now trying to lobby among themselves to say that the people are instigated, their properties could be safeguarded. But the fact remains that we know, because we've been in the field, we know a lot of them have invested a lot of money in the Western Ghats regions for development of ecotourism, of building resorts, and some have just taken over hundreds of acres of land nearby forests. So they are using this ruse by saying the livelihoods of the tribals, the livelihoods of the local people will be affected. This is not correct. The fact remains this eco-sensitive zone rule notification will benefit all the people. I'll just go back a little. If you look at what happened in Kerala and Karnataka in the past when the landslides happened, it was all because of the destruction caused by the quarrying, either by quarrying or by resorts. All right. And then what happened? It impacted so many people. Look at a place in Malappuram. The 20 families got washed away because of one resort was built in an ecologically sensitive area where they should not have been doing that. So our politicians, I appeal to them, they are honorable members of the parliament or the legislature or the council. They need to apply their mind and to understand that this is a future. We are going to live today, we are gone tomorrow. We need to leave behind something for the future generations. We are already
Fair
in the
point.
midst of
Yes.
a bursting.
Yes, fair point, sir. But you've made a couple of charges at the BJP ruled state of Karnataka and the ones who are opposing this move. I would like Mr. Mohan Krishna to respond. There was one point that Mr. Hoover made is that there is land owned by politicians. So stakes are very high for the netas. They do not want to part with their personal property. That is one. And second, he says there is no understanding of what are the stakes involved. Look at the kind of natural calamities the state of Karnataka is facing. They want to turn a blind eye to all of that. Mr. Mohan Krishna?
Rita, I respect the words used by Mr. Joseph Hoover. But at the same time, you have to understand, politicians are also human beings. They also think in the same way as you are thinking, Mr. Joseph Hoover. But
Thank you.
You have to balance it between development and environment, which we are doing it continuously for so many years. And you have charged, I will first answer to you and then come to the point, which I would like to make it. You have charged that politicians, netas, have owned hundreds of acres of land in Karnataka. If you have any documents or anything for that matter, I request you to the concerned department and appropriate action will be taken. And I don't think it is true also for that nature, because our politicians are also in a state of mind to develop. If we are caught in a cobweb in Western Ghats, we have to understand. This goes through the six states, in fact. In Karnataka, as you mentioned, 20,426 square meter is the year, and it will be affected. What Karnataka government is trying to do today, or the central government is trying to do today, is the same part. Like, their interest is to save the environment, at the same time, take care of the development activities. How it has to be done? I would like to mention 2-3 points here first. The first report, which was formed for eco-sensitive zones, areas for that matter, was Madhav Gadgil.
Yes.
Report. In that Madhav Gadgil report, why there was so controversial? It was so controversial. Not just politicians, people across the 6 states, there were a lot of protests. And it was during the UPA regime. This and this committee has been formed to Environment and Forest Ministry. Now, after that report was not given to the public, and it was not given to the right people also. And for that matter, Supreme Court has to intervene. And now it is available in the website. 922 pages. That report is available in the website. The controversial things has been identified. So then came Kasturi Rangan Committee.
Yes.
What is Kasturi Rangan Committee did? Kasturi Rangan Committee, they have divided. Why Madhav Gadgil's report was not called controversial because it was practically impossible to implement such recommendations. Now, Kasturi Rangan report, what happened? Look, we are in a very, very, as I told you, in a complex situation. These 6 states, and this Western Ghats pass through, we have Konkan Railway today. We made Konkan Railway there in the Western Ghats. We had this problem. How many years it took for the development to happen? So after Konkan Railway has been done, there is no ecosystem has been disturbed. You have to understand. That's one point. Now, coming to the habitats and people who are living in those areas. They are disturbed today mentally because, as Mr. Grover was also saying, permanent structures will be removed. What is permanent structure? A house. Can it be removed so easily? So you mean to say politicians are supporting this? We have to support. We are from the people.
No, I'm sorry, I have to intervene here. There is no such provision to displace anyone. Voluntary tribal relocation is clearly defined in this draft. The report states all ongoing activities will be very clear. It's all about reading and understanding. The point about people, the tribal people, has been clarified a number of times. Yet I see that the BJP at the state BJP. Now this is again interesting because here is a case where the state BJP is opposed to a move that the center has taken. So it's BJP versus BJP in a way. I want you to respond to that before I go to my other panelists, Mr. Krishna, that why is it that here you are referring to the UPA regime and that particular Gadgil commission, whereas your government at the center has also come up with a very similar notification?
Madhav Gadgil, he was a planning commission member. Who was Kasturi Rangan? He was a planning commission member. What did they do? Because government wanted a report in favor of them, central government, then UPA government, they did the same thing. Today, ET Ayog is there. It's a customary thing. The central government has to give notification today because we have to balance it between development and environment. For that matter, center has given the notification.
Yes.
It is not against BJP ruled states or anything like that. Now, the order is already there from the Supreme Court. That, as per that, they have given the notification. If any objections to be filed, can be filed. For that matter, Karnataka government is going to file an objection. And we have taken, our Honorable Chief Minister has taken a stand that he will go with the all-party delegation to the Central Environment Ministry and if required to the Prime Minister also. And he will submit whatever has to be done.
But basically you are saying that you're opposed to the idea of declaring the Western Ghats as an ecologically sensitive zone. Are you opposed to that idea? Just give me a yes or no answer. Because bulk of the area comes under Karnataka and there will be restrictions. You're opposed to calling it an ecologically sensitive area. Just yes or no answer, Mr. Krishna.
We are not opposing for that matter. But at the same time, we want something to be given to the people also. Some recommendations have to be added to that.
Okay, you want modification in the current draft notification. That's what you're saying. Aishwarya Mahadev,
exactly.
you want to come in to the points that were made by Mr. Mohan Krishna. He also said that the previous UPA government's study in this matter was highly objectionable. At this point of time, it seems that, the opposition has become redundant. It's the BJP in the state itself. that is opposing the centre's move. And in an interesting case, again, you see that the parties in Karnataka, even the opposition parties, are unanimous in opposing this move.
Good evening, Afrida. I think first and foremost, I will reply to what Mr. Mohan Krishna said, and then allow me a little bit of time to respond to what Mr. Hoover said as well. Afrida, when Mr. Mohan Krishna comes out and makes it seem like the Kargil report and the Kasturi Rangan report were a form of for the previous UPA government, then if this government had that much of an opposition to it, they should have never notified it, one. And second thing, when you talk about this, this BJP has this idea of this double engine sarkar, we will do what is best for the people. But when you look at flood relief, when you look at disaster relief, when you look at GST compensation and now this, you realize that double engine sarkar is hilarious because 25 BJP MPs from my state, and you still don't have one person raising an issue about what is happening. And that is extremely problematic. Now, besides the politics aside, yes, if you wanted to really talk about ecological development, as Mr. Hoover said, maybe the Gargill report would have made more sense because there was any sort of space for development whatsoever. It was almost about ecological sensitivity. But the reality
then why did you appoint Kasturi Rangan then for another report?
Sir, I didn't interrupt your diatribe. I really, you don't interrupt mine. Please,
go ahead, Aishwarya Mahadev, go ahead. Yes, no interruptions, please. Yes.
So, the irony about environmental conservation is that when people attend Copenhagen, COP23, the world leaders go in private jets and, the carbon emission. So there's never an absolute as to whether it is development or whether it is ecological preservation. There is a middle ground that has to be found. My few disagreements with what Mr. Hoover said is simplistically this. You presuppose and assume that all of this is a politician's fault and why the implementation is not happening. But sir, you inherently have to realize the Kasturi Rangan report also has flaws in itself. Let me point out two. One is the manner in which the survey was done was aerially and not on the ground. Second, the functionaries are the bureaucracy and not the panchayats. And three, for Karnataka, where we're losing over 1,600 villages, you realize several of these habitations have come up in ecological sensitive areas because inherently and culturally, from sacred groves to whatnot, the tribals have lived inherently in these spaces. So, sir, to presuppose that, Afrida, this question of saying, are we opposing ESA or not is a wrong question to even ask. You cannot paint the entirety of the Western Ghats in a singular manner. In Kerala, a majority of the highly populated villages are within ecologically sensitive zones. The Kasturi Rangan report also is damaging because it allows outside the core zone where you can't have mining and quarrying to have illegal activities permissible, like quarrying and mining as well. There are inherent flaws in the report, which is why both Siddaramaya's government in 2013 and also Kumaraswamy's government in the coalition both oppose them. The fact remains, you cannot assume that this report is perfect. There are a lot of flaws, a lot of human lives are being harmed. And just because there's no clarity about, displacement and whatnot, you can't assume that the politicians are politicizing it. You're taking the livelihood of not only tribals, but millions who live in that area. Go visit Malnad, Karnataka, go visit coastal Karnataka. You see the manner in which these developments exist.
So there must be a balance, a healthy balance somewhere, Aishwarya Mahadev. What are you proposing? Where is the fine line? Where is the healthy balance? Because I know and it is reported. Okay, go ahead. Yes.
I'll tell you, Afrida, the singular fact remains that to survey over 60,000 square kilometers of area and to assume an aerial survey is good enough to tell you the reality of the ground is one, a fallacy. Second thing, you have to consult with the Gram Sabhas that work on the ground there. And third, you have to have a strategize. You cannot singularly put everybody into the singular zone. You have to have more consultation. And the Kasturi Rangan report, for the 37% it preserves, does not solve the problem of illegal mining in the remaining area because illegal mining is a problem. You see building in zones that they're not supposed to is a problem. One report on conservation and ESA cannot solve these multifarious problems. And that is what we're talking about. You cannot peg the problems of Kerala with the problems of Karnataka, the problems of Karnataka with Goa. The report has to have far more diversification or decentralization of consultation. And then any state, whether it's BJP or whatnot, and I feel bad for Mr. Bommai's government that his center has done this to him. But only then will any state actually agree.
I think that's a very fair point, and for once, Aishwarya Mahadev has, in a way, has taken a position which is above, taking a political side to say that there should be a decentralized way of looking at it, and each state has its own compulsions. What I wanted to point out here is that, in terms of what we know about this entire stretch, which cuts across multiple states, this is the Western Ghats recognized by UNESCO as the world's 8th most important biodiversity hotspots, and it contains more than 30% of all species of plant, fish, reptile, amphibian, birds and mammals, which is found in the whole country. So there may be state boundaries, and I take your point, but I'll put it across to another expert on the panel, Kavita Ashok, to explain to us if you agree with this, that, do state boundaries matter when we're looking at a consistent part of this country and we're looking at maintaining the biodiversity, or you think we have to, as a matter of prudence, look at one state as different from the other in this case?
I'm going to put forward a few points which will, explain why I feel that this report, this committee, I agree with it, or it is justified. So there's another side of the coin too. So firstly, I want to say that, to bring this into implementation, firstly, biodiversity committees should have been or should be formed in villages so that there is a ground approach to understanding what is the livelihood which is being disturbed, or how are these people going to be, accommodated when they're uprooted. So this is one part of it. But besides this, I feel it is justified because degradation of Western Ghats has been going on for so many years, and it has been a very debatable issue. Now, because of the pressure of NGT, this had to be, really brought in the front and passed. I think the NGT was putting pressure on the central government and the ministry, so they had to do it very quickly and fast forward it. But I think, look at the floods in the area, look at the landslides, look at the degradation of soil, deforestation, and wildlife species. I mean, we just can't say that you can't, just because you have this humanitarian approach to everything, you feel that the environment can, take a walk. No, I think the wildlife species, the calamities coming in that area, look at the floods, the landslides, we have to take everything in consideration. And I think it's high time that we stop creating a hue and cry about people and urbanization and buildings, and even like someone on the panel said, maybe it is vested interest of the politicians, local people there, local politicians there. So I totally feel that it's high time environment is brought to the forefront, and it should be, our first priority. So I think that the report, of course, there could have been more adjustment, and there should be, but I still feel that we needed it because Western Ghat has been in this confusing dilemma for years now.
There is fear, there is apprehension, there is lack of clarity, there's ambiguity. Yes. But, like Aishwarya mentioned, this is an area in Malnad, in Karnataka, that where we are seeing a lot of resistance coming to this area in Chikmagaluru district, where you have 147 villages. Yes. In Chikmagaluru, Mudigere, Kopa, Enarpura and Sringeri. These are the areas. Yeah. So I was just going to say that, here you have, this is the part of Karnataka which is going to be impacted if this notification finally sees the light of the day. And of course, now it is still in the consultation process. Let's be very clear that this is the centre's proposal in a way. And objections and observations are invited, which is why this is just the appropriate time to have a conversation like this, so that, we get clarity on who will be impacted in terms of whether there will be lives and livelihoods at stake. Now, that clarity must be there. You can't go with a plan where you have so many people impacted and no alternatives created, like we have in this country often enough. Development at the cost of what? We already know the kind of calamities, the natural calamities that Karnataka has been facing. Look at the recent flash floods, etc. Extremely devastating. So I want to bring in Sandeep Ghosh as well to the conversation. Mr. Ghosh, as a neutral observer, where do you stand on this?
See, first of all, Afrida, I must say everybody has taken a very balanced view. There are several sides to this story, and I think I'm very glad that everybody has taken a reasoned view. I'll come from a different perspective. In a country as populous as India, land acquisition is always a problem. Because forget, you're talking about thousands of square kilometers here, but even if you were to do something just for setting up a factory or anywhere else, or even a small mining operations, all these factors come into play. And there's no one size fits all solution. Essentially, finally, because, this vested interest or clash of interest, some are genuine, some are vested, as you would say. There is a question of, somebody mentioned politicians. There are sometimes issues about, illegal mining, people who have got, or people who are even forest mafias who are, taking out timber from there. So there are a whole lot of interests which is mixed up. So ultimately, all these things require a political solution. One of the problems, I'm not contesting anything, Kavita. I'm just putting across my general view. You can, as I said, there are multiple
Sorry, I'm
angles.
interrupting you here. I have been asked to go to a breaking news coming in. We've just received information of former Mumbai Police Commissioner